One of those. Check, please. Show's over.
Well, we know where caveman stands.
Just for
No.
old time's sake, can we get a chunk out of that styrofoam cup?
This is no longer roll up the rim to win, so no. I mean, you can still roll up the rim, but it's a brand new tee, so if I do that, it'll spill all over me.
Oh,
It'll look messy on camera, and people don't want to see that.
I guess the Canadians aren't so serious about their luck as the Irish are.
Ain't that the truth? Give me a leprechaun any day. Um, Be the Change. Be the Change is working on his own project. Johnny Flowers, family, friends, all these things. So he's hyper focused on that, and we are super like happy for him, and even more ecstatic that we have Crypto Weebly now because we need a little estrogen in these lives. That's standing on business and talking facts. So yeah. She's a much needed addition to this
Oh,
group.
absolutely. No,
Thank
you've been
you,
great
guys.
so far. Hey, Caveman, if you're looking for more estrogen, you and me could always do a live where we just eat tofu. Get a
Is
couple
estrogen
miso
equal
soups.
tofu?
Estrogen is in tofu. Yes,
Oh
Is it? Oh,
yeah.
is it really?
it is.
Oh, we
Oh,
be
Yes.
I
coming
thought
in
you were
heavy.
being.
No, no, it's definitely estrogen heavy for sure.
That's so funny. I thought you were making fun of people who are vegetarian or vegans.
No, so and do you know why they call soy boys soy boys? Like the
Again, this is going down a
feminine.
different
Because they
path
got
here.
Yeah,
man
real quick. They're feminine. They have a little bit of feminine. They had soy formula when they were babies, and soy formula is very high in estrogen. So actually, it's a medical condition. Soy boys.
Wow.
Very, very sensitive, not very masculine. Usually, I'm not trying to stereotype, but generally, that's where soy boys come from.
Do you think my mother fed me tofu or soy as a child and I didn't
I
know
don't
it?
think you're very feminine.
I mean, I get accused. I got maybe not so much in my later years, but growing up, I was always accused of that.
Oh, really? I
What did you
didn't.
just say?
All
You were
right.
always
I
what?
grew up with women all around me every single day of my life.
So that's different, though. I think having that feminine influence and having being feminine is different. But I don't think you're
Wait, I'm not
feminine.
wearing dresses.
I guess you're not quite as masculine as Bully, though.
No, I
No,
guess
in New York,
as long as you didn't put on your mom's lipstick and high heels for
that's
Sunday
what I'm
morning
saying. I'm not doing
pancakes, I guess
that.
we're pretty much on the
But
same page here.
I'm talking about like, your personality and who you are and your anyways, we just got off track here.
Yes, sorry, guys. I
What are
just
we
wanted to give
doing?
you a fun
What are we
fact. You
doing today,
started it with
guys?
it with
Are we doing
it.
V-Chain?
I
Estrogen.
think we're doing V-Chain tonight.
Vechain.
Yeah, okay, so we got 92 people here. It's 8:09. Guys, we're gonna be joined later by Wadi Crypto X. He's gonna be in the house. This is his favorite project. Um, Wadi, if you're listening, I got some questions. As always, we are not here to tell you guys to buy, sell, trade, or anything in between, if there is anything in between. Showing you guys what we do when it comes to research. Showing you guys that the importance of doing your due diligence and not just taking things for face value, but really trying to go deep into the projects. That are not just your headlines and asking the tough questions and seeing if this is something that resonates with you. And if it is, um, if this show shows you something about VChain that, or any other project for that matter, that resonates within you, take that information and run with it and then go explore it yourself. I also say that, every time this is a show that needs your input, not just at the end when we vote on the next project, but where you ask the questions. You might know something that we didn't research and add to the conversation and the story. This is how this show balloons and grows, and you get the full experience. So again, if you have any questions, I'll write it down. If you don't see me writing, then just ask it again, and I'll catch it. And I think did I miss anything else? I think that's it.
No, I don't think so. Guys,
All
thank you
right.
so much
Well,
for being here. If you could tap the screen, share it the live, repost it. It's always appreciated. Any little act of your guys' engagement, very much appreciated. Are you guys ready to jump in?
Ready.
All right. As always, I like to address the real world problems. And I'm going to actually start this off with a question. When you guys go to the store and you pick up a product, how do you actually know where it came from? And I'm not just talking about like what the label says, but I mean, like, how do you really know? How do you know where it came from? How do you know if it was handled properly? How do you know who touched it along the delivery route? How do you know that the company's even telling you the truth? They tell you it's organic or if it's grass-fed. The honest answer is that you don't. You just put your trust into the label. And that's not just you and me as consumers, but that's how the entire system works. The companies, they're trusting their suppliers. The suppliers are trusting the distributors. And us as retailers, we just trust the data that they're giving to us. We blindly trust it. But everyone in this ecosystem is relying on information that came from somewhere else. And we kind of just hope that it's accurate. So every single day we have goods that are being produced, they're being moved, they're being sold all over the world. And every step of that process, there is information that is generated and created. And this information could be something as simple as like where something was made, how it was transported, or even if it met up with certain standards like the FDA, right? Or automobile standards. And that information really kind of starts to seriously matter in an open market, because that product or that information, sometimes it's about the quality of the item. It could be about safety regulations. It could be about compliance. So here is the problem, okay? That information, it's fragmented. It doesn't live in one place. It spreads out across different companies, different systems, and different countries. And each one of those, they have their own records. Each one of them is controlling their own data. And none of that information actually connects into one provable version of the truth. So you can imagine food that's being shipped across the world, right? It leaves the supplier, it moves through the transportation, and then it gets stored somewhere, and then it ends up in your local grocery store. And at every step during that supply chain, something could go wrong, okay? The temperature could change in the truck, the handling of the product could be mistreated, and then by the time it gets to you, you have no idea. But you're still trusting everything behind the scenes the way that they tell you that it worked. So if we take that idea and we apply that to something that matters much more than just the steaks at your grocery store, what if we apply it to the pharmaceutical industry or the automotive industry, right? That conversation on trust, that the information is true, becomes much more critical, because now we're talking about health, we're talking about regulations. So that's really where the issue starts to show up, because right now there is no system today that is allowing multiple independent parties to all share the same data, okay? And for a long time that was acceptable because the systems were much smaller than where they are today. The supply chains, they weren't on the same scale as they are today. So as things became more global, more complex, even more regulated as we moved into the 2020s, the government started to step in. And they're basically saying that we don't want to just hear what happened. We want proof that something happened. And we see that especially in places like the European Union. They're pushing towards something called digital product passports. We'll get a little bit into that a little bit later. But essentially what that means is that this government, they want proof that the products are going to be verified, and they're going to require a real verified data about where they came from, where they're made, things like that. So now the entire system, supply chain system, as well as other use cases that they're tapping into, there is just an overall new requirement. It's not enough to just store the data about the supply chain, but it has to be shared, it has to be trusted, it has to be very difficult to manipulate that. So when we look at what's really going on, they're trying to figure out how we can create a system where there are multiple parties that can rely on the same information without having to blindly trust each other. Okay? Is there anything you guys would like to add to that before I go into what Vechain actually is?
Keep going.
Okay.
I'm good.
So Vechain it's just a system that's designed to record information, as simply as that is, right? But they do it in a way where multiple parties can trust it. So instead of one company keeping all of the records and another company keeping theirs, nobody can really verify anything across the board between each other, because all that information is still fragmented. It's still operating in silos. So Vechain comes in and they say, what if all of that information that was recorded, we could put that into one shared system that nobody can manipulate? So that's basically the core idea of it. Every time something happens to a product, it's going to get recorded. And when it's created, it gets recorded. When it's shipped, it gets recorded. When it's stored, it gets recorded. When it's inspected, it's going to get recorded. And all of that information, once it's written down, it's locked into the blockchain. Okay, that's how we can actually trust the record of what's actually happening to it. So a little bit more about the technicals. Vechain is a layer 1. Okay, it's a layer 1 blockchain, and it is it's pretty much the base system where everything is going to be recorded on top of. Okay, but what's more important is that Vechain is kind of operating with businesses in mind. That's pretty much the whole concept behind it. They're not focused on traders. They're not focused on speculation. They're focused on businesses. And what Vechain is primarily kind of targeting is tracking, verification, and real-world data. That's really their meat and potatoes. So another important piece to understand about Vechain is that there's actually 2 tokens, okay? One is called VET. It's VET. That's probably what everyone really understands. That's the main token that's tied to this network. But there's also another one called VTHO, and that's what's actually being used to pay for the activity on the network. So whenever a company is going to use Vechain, they're not thinking about buying and trading these tokens, buying it low and selling it high. The businesses is trying to figure out, how can we record the data, how can we track the products, and how can we verify the information that's being stored in there. And this is what's going on in the background of this system. Another really cool aspect to think about Vechain that I think separates it from a lot of projects is that you don't have to tear down your current system and start over. Okay, Vechain can already plug into what these supply chains or these corporations or these companies or these governments, whatever software they have, they can already plug in. Because when you're dealing with companies and supply chains and regulations, you don't want to start from scratch. So they're already working with the existing systems. I think that that's one of the really cool things about it. Anything you guys would like to add?
I think I would just add that it's EVM compatible, and developers can build on Vechain with the same tools as Ethereum. I think that's kind of important. But other than that, I think you hit on everything else I had.
Mine's a much longer conversation. You're doing great, though.
I'm good. If you guys don't got anything else to kind of sum up what exactly we're doing here.
So I guess, Bully, with regards to what you just said, the idea that they're using is, or the idea that they're going after is that the product, how do you say this, the chain of not development, but of manufacturing is where Vechain could be used to verify its authenticity or its integrity or its use case from beginning to end. So from the second it gets made, or even before that, where the product comes from to where it gets to the consumer. That's what Vechain's is trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And they do this through multiple use cases, right? It's not just like the food supply chain, but you could see it in this white paper as well. They also have counterfeiting for high value products. They're working with things like Louis Vuitton bags to ensure that the actual Louis Vuitton bags are authentic. And it's just, we're ensuring that we can trust the data that's being deployed on here. We see it with this digital vehicle passports, okay? Trusting the data. We see they're also working with, I'm sure you'll get into it, but big names, BMW, blockchain-based assurance solutions. So regardless of whatever the carbon credits, regardless of whatever the use case is, it kind of expands into a lot of things, but the core premise of it is we have to trust the data. We can't just blindly trust whatever the supplier, the manufacturer, the shipper is going to tell us what happened. No, we want to be able to self-verify every single step across the entire supply chain, regardless of whatever it's going to be. We're just trusting data on the blockchain.
Yep.
Go ahead. I'll say it. Go ahead.
It's a little bit greener. I feel like they're kind of focused on, a greener product as well. So like it's proof of authority, so consensus known, vetted validators run networks. It's not anonymous miners, so it's faster, greener, and enterprise compliant. Little things like that, which, yeah.
So I would just say that like I actually have a real use case with VeChain, like for real, not just in theory. And I hate that I can say this, but it is true. So I purchased a an LV bag. I don't know, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, and maybe 5 years ago. And I didn't know this, but there's not a UPC code or a tag in there. It's literally a microchip. And there was a problem with that bag. It bled, which shouldn't happen, but it bled the caramel color on the inside bled into the whitish color on the outside, and ruined the whole entire half of it. Looked like it was like kind of a pink almost, for no reason, no rhyme or reason. And I remember going to the shop and being like, guys, like this is not like nothing happened here. Just for some reason this happened. Anyways, they literally are. We were both. I guess this was the first time the person had to deal with this problem, and we're both looking for whatever the identification code is. And until the manager came and said, no, 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 take out your phone, her phone, and she had the app and literally looked for the microchip inside of it, and then got all of the details based on like where the leather was cut from, which part of the country it came from, and all the information needed. Without that, it's done. Like, and that's how specifically for like products like that with LV, they have to. There's so much theft and or BS products. They actually have to make sure that they can authenticate their merchandise, right?
Yeah.
So that's a real use case that actually exists in all of their products. So shout out to
that's
them.
really cool that you were able to actually interact with that. And they gave you a statistic here. They're saying luxury brands lost about $30 billion of sales to counterfeit. So there is some sort of a demand, even if it is just, women's baggage or, luxury clothes or whatever it is. That ability to self-verify that something is true or real there's a big market for it, right?
Absolutely.
Can you put a price on trust?
No,
Or transparency.
you cannot. And I really want to comment on this. So let's put a pin in that till the end of the show. You want to go on to founders?
Sure. So the team. Let's start at the top. So Sunny Liu, the founder and the CEO. Before VeChain, Sunny was the chief information officer at Louis Vuitton China. So just think about that for like what that means for a second. He was the person responsible for all the technology systems at one of the most counterfeited luxury brands on the planet. He saw the counterfeiting problem up close and from the inside of the Fortune 500 company. VeChain's entire focus on supply chain and authenticity came directly from Sunny's lived experiences running enterprise tech for luxury goods. So he definitely brought that into VeChain. Before Louis Vuitton, Sunny spent nearly 20 years as an IT executive at Fortune 500 companies. He's not a crypto bro who just read a white paper and started a blockchain. He came from an enterprise world. He understands how large companies operate, and he built VeChain to solve problems he personally saw in the real world. So that's kind of rare in this space. Then you have the rest of the team. Jay Zhang, the CFO, he oversees the financial and operational structure of VeChain's foundation. Having a dedicated CFO is kind of a big deal, and I think most of these guys do. Kevin Fang, the COO, was a former senior director at PwC, one of the big four accounting firms. Kevin's background is in consulting for large enterprises. Dr. Peter Zhao, the chief scientist, the technical architect of VeChain's Thor blockchain protocol. He's the one responsible for making sure the technology actually works at enterprise scale. So Vechain has the proper foundation of the governance structure. There's a board, a technical committee, again, English is my second language, technical committee, and an operational committee, a regulation and compliance committee, and a public relations committee. So this is a group of developers dedicated to the structure of this real organization. And I
So there's
think,
just two things I want to touch on, if you don't mind.
no, not at all.
Okay, so the one is with Sunny Liu. Obviously LV talked about. He also worked at 3M and Bacardi.
Okay.
So now maybe he wasn't the CIO. The unfortunate thing with Chinese companies and or the government in total, in its totality, is information is very limited, right? And then Mr. Zhang, he worked for Deloitte and PwC. That PwC connection is really important for what we're going to talk about later. I just want to make sure that people remember those names because it is indicative of where you'll start to draw those lines on, oh, this is why they went down this path.
Connecting the dots. Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to touch on for founders?
So let me maybe pick you guys' brains a little bit. Do you think that this kind of team with these founders kind of took approach to blockchain a little bit differently than the other projects that we have reviewed, right? Because it seems as if they kind of started with like a real world problem inside of like a real business, and then they're using blockchain as a tool to try to solve that instead of just coming a blockchain company and selling their products. No, like we actually created a business, and then hey, we realized that this software, this technology called blockchain can actually help us.
Yeah, I think that Sunny Liu was hyper fixated and hyper focused on solving and really the counterfeit problem. Like he was definitely, I feel like, dedicated to solving that problem because, like you said, what was it? How many billions of dollars are lost to counterfeiting every year? I think it's really important when you see a need like that, like when you're in something and you see it and you're trying to fill that void or you're trying to fix that. I think that's really important to like not, yeah.
See, I agree with you guys. It's also part of the problem, though. Like because they didn't have people who were maybe had more of the expertise of blockchain and crypto, I think they probably missed where it was headed or what it could provide. And I think that is indicative of the shift, right? Like just because you have a real world need doesn't mean the tech is there, or that the appetite for the tech and that real world problem to actually go mainstream. And I think that was part of the problem with VeChain.
So I think I agree with that to some extent, but I feel like when you're super early in this space, which obviously pretty much everybody is, what I really like about the technology is that it's not fixed. It's not like there can't be upgrades or patches or, that type of stuff. So I feel like they can integrate other things as well. And I think it's ever evolving. Like this space is ever evolving. These companies are ever evolving. And I feel like what's going to determine if they sink or they float is if they're able to adapt and change to this environment. Because I worked in technology, long before this. And I'm sure, as you guys know, if you're not on the next latest, greatest thing, like you are in a year, you're old news. Like you've got to constantly be up and changing.
I agree with that.
And so I feel like this space is a lot like that. They don't necessarily see everything, but as things happen and come, if they can adapt and change, they're probably going to make it.
And I totally love that. I love the fact that you have a leadership that sees the problem and adapts. I agree with that. Like I'm sure people are starting to feel where I'm going to go with this.
I know.
a cheetah doesn't become a platypus.
No,
You know what I
but
mean?
I mean, if it's in its lane, I guess we'll
Yeah.
have to see where you go with it. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll
Okay.
have to see where this goes.
All right. So on that note, let's go to tokenomics.
All right. So let's see. That's that. Tokenomics. Okay. So this is kind of where Vechain did something that almost nobody else has done in crypto. They separated the value of the network from the cost of using the network. And when you really understand why they did this, it just makes so much sense. So if you're Walmart and you're running thousands of supply chain transactions per day on blockchain, what's the one thing you absolutely cannot have? That's unpredictable transaction costs. So imagine if every time Ethereum's price pumped, your supply chain tripled overnight. No CFO at a Fortune 500 company would sign up for that. So Vechain solved this with a 2-token system. So the first token, like Bully was saying, is VET, and that's the value layer. So VET is the main token. You hold VET, you stake VET, you vote with VET. It's the governance token and value storage token of the entire ecosystem. So think of it as like owning stock in Vechain. The more Vechain grows, the more valuable VET becomes. So then we'll go on to, so the max supply is 86.17 billion VET. The circulating supply is 85.98 billion VET. The price as of today, which I think you guys had up, is 0.00656. The market cap is 564 million, and VET staked post Hayabusa is 7 billion and then some, and that's locked. So that's 8% of the supply. And then we'll move on to token 2, which is the gas layer. VTHO, or VET Thor Energy, is the fuel. So every single transaction on the on Vechain network costs VTHO. When you scan a product, when you log a shipment, when you start contract, when a smart contract is executed, VTHO gets spent. And the benefit is VTHO is generated by holding and staking VET. So if you hold VET, you're consistently earning the gas that powers the network. So that means Walmart does not have to buy VET and hope the price is low when they need to run transaction. They burn VTHO at a predictable price to run their operations. Vechain can eventually adjust VTHO transaction costs through governance and keeps enterprise costs stable. That's something no other major blockchain offers. So then I go into the Renaissance upgrade. Are you going to touch on that, Caveman? Should I just skip over that one?
I'll do it later.
Okay. And then are you also going to touch on the deflationary flywheel, or do you want me to touch on that one?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. So more enterprise use means more transactions. More transaction means more VTHO is burned, and more burns means VTHO gets scarcer. So scarcer VTHO means staking VET is more attractive. More staking means less VET in circulation, and less VET circulating with growing demand means the price goes up. It's a self-reinforcing loop, and it's powered by real business activity, which I'm sure Bully is probably going to go into that as well. And then the customer side, do you want me to go into that, Bully, or are you going to touch on that one?
You got it. I'm just curious in terms of the staking. Do we know? Is this the current staking? It says 6%? Do we know?
I think it's 8%.
What is it?
I got that it's 8% of the supply.
No, I'm
That's
saying like, what
locked.
is the yield that people are earning?
Oh, I'm not sure. That sounds about right, though.
Let me see
Probably
if I
it's
can
like
look that up.
six.
I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I didn't pick up that.
The other thing I would just add to what you were saying, Lulu, is that when the VTHO gets burned, it actually doesn't all get burned. 70 gets burned, like 70%, and 30% goes to the validators for doing their job.
Right.
So
Is
that's
that
Yeah.
correct?
Oh,
can't see.
that's 1 to 2%.
Is that correct?
It must be.
Let, so I again, like, we'll get to the end of it there, but you don't just, there's another coin, is what I'm trying to say on this,
There is another coin.
There's
3 coins, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we'll get there.
And I didn't get into that one. Actually, that's not true. I'm going to get into it right now.
All right, go ahead.
3
good.
coins.
Just a little bit. So this is the
Oh, I'm
the
gonna learn
consumer
something
side
here.
of the coin, right? So the V better is the consumer side of the equilibrium. So let's see. Vechain launched V Better as a sustainability app platform built on Vechain Thor. As of today, V Better has 5.5 million users across 114 countries and has processed nearly 50 million transactions. So apps like Mugshot reward people with using reusable coffee cups. I don't know why that makes me think of caveman. Maybe it's just the coffee cup taking a bite out of every week. But so Green Cart rewards sustainable grocery shopping, and every one of those apps introductions create burns through VTHO. So even regular consumers are feeding the deflationary engine without even knowing it. I'm sure Caveman has got something to say about that. But yeah, so that's the third one. So yeah, that's what I
So
have.
originally, just to go back to what we were talking about initially with just the 2 coins, they operated with obviously like proof of authority. That's how the network was being ran originally. Obviously, there's a switch and a change, and what we were just talking about. But yes, that is originally how it was constructed.
I'm not pushing Caveman's buttons. I love his brain, and I'm excited to see what he has to say about it because he always has a different lens than I do. So I like that.
I love it. Yeah. No, we should have different. Well, no, we don't necessarily have to have different lenses, but it makes
No.
it makes it better. Different viewpoints are always great.
Definitely.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
So I guess just it's a loop. I just want to say that like if I were to draw this like on a whiteboard, I would draw VET being held, so staked, and then VTHO is generated, and then the transaction is burned, VTHO, and then it gets scarce, and then the value goes up, and it's like a continuous loop that happens, and that's exactly how it happens. So yeah.
I have a question.
That's it.
V Better is a third token?
Yeah.
I'll get into it.
Okay, I gotta learn. I need to learn then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Now's the time that everybody wanted to hear about what happened. The who, the why, the what, the where, and the when. So this chain, as we all talked about, it's been around for a while, 2015 to be precise. Vechain's white paper 3.0 marks 2015 as the establishment of the project. Vechain was created in 2015 as Misty Cryptoweewu just said, Sunny Liu, former CIO of Louis Vuitton China. It started as a subsidiary project under Bitsy, a Chinese blockchain company. The focus was applying blockchain to real-world business problems, an emphasis on business problems. So the founder came from a business background, and he saw that there was a need, and he was trying to fulfill that, or like Bully was talking about, create a solution with blockchain. Specifically, supply chain transparency, anti-counterfeiting with luxury goods, production authentication and traceability. And this is one of the key distinctions. While most 2015 crypto projects focused on currency, Vechain focused on enterprise utility from day one. They were targeting companies, not retail users. They were building permissioned, semi-centralized systems, which later became proof of authority, focused on compliance and real-world integration. This wasn't what was happening in 2015, so they were definitely ahead of the curve. In 2016, Vechain focused heavily on product authentication, preventing counterfeit luxury goods, verifying authenticity using blockchain records, and how it worked, at least in the early version. Physical item gets a unique ID, whether being through RFID chips, NFC tags, or QR codes. Data was then recorded on blockchain, and users can then scan and verify authenticity. Literally a pioneer in this, at least from a business perspective. This became Vechain's signature use case. This was, as I said, ahead of its time. Most crypto projects were not touching on hardware at all. In 2017, the white paper 1.0, which Bully was showing you earlier, was released. Vechain Foundation forms, and its timeline says it's anchored early proofs of concept with enterprise clients in France, Norway, and China. Vechain launched its first token, the Vechain token, or VEN. It was built on Ethereum. It was an ERC20 standard. Vechain then launched an ICO, and they raised about $20 million American. They attracted strong investors, especially in Asia. One of the biggest milestones was Vechain began transitioning away from Bitsy. I'm sure I'm going to say this, but I'll just say it now. If any of you guys have actually worked with a Chinese company, specifically one that's like high end, or not high end, but like high level, so not a small company, but a big company, you always have two bosses in the room at all times. One of the bosses is what you think, the CEO of said company. The other boss, not a company guy, not at all. So to transition away from Bitsy and to become its own entity was a massive thing. Now, that being said, they're always going to have the influence. They're always going to be, and by they, I mean the government. It will always, as a Chinese company that's a massive company, you will always have the government's input at all times. So they positioned itself as a standalone global blockchain project. This included expanding international presence, building its own identity and ecosystem. In 2018, the biggest milestone, the mainnet launch, Vechain Thor goes live in June. Vechain moved off Ethereum, became its own blockchain network, and this mattered because it had full control over fees, governance, and scalability. It designed specifically for enterprise use. This is when Vechain became a real layer 1 blockchain, when they had their own chain. With the mainnet launch, it came a major change. The token swap happened. So originally they had VEN, and then it went to VET. So the conversion rate was 1 VEN equaled 100 VET. So at the time, there was 1 billion VEN. And so the 100 token swap was the 86 billion, 85 billion-ish. And the reason why there's not 100 billion is because some of them were burned and some of them were escrowed. They also had the launch of the Vechain Foundation. Basically, it formalized, it managed ecosystem growth, support development, and handled governance decisions. This helped legitimize Vechain globally. Vechain introduced proof of authority, or POA consensus. The key characteristics there were validators are approved entities, faster and more efficient than proof of work, and more centralized, but still like enterprise friendly. Key partnerships in 2018. Key partnerships were DNV, which launched Mistori, that verified the products or systems that met standards, which led to working with BYD, at one of the earliest real attempts to solve ESG tracking. For those of you guys who don't know, ESG tracking is environmental, social, and governance tracking. Tokenizing carbon reduction, linking IoT and blockchain and sustainability. Unfortunately, it kind of stayed more experimental and there was no real mass adoption in 2018. They also, which Blockchain Bully kind of alluded to, they started BMW Startup Garage. It was a digital vehicle data tracking and mileage fraud prevention system. 2018 also had the crypto bear market, as we all know. Prices dropped across the board, including VET. Vechain kept building and prices kept falling. It continued, however, to work with PwC. While many projects were still in pilot stages, businesses were actually using Vechain through PwC connections in retail, logistics, and product verification. PwC helped turn proof of concept into opening Fortune 500 company doors. So without PwC, these guys probably don't get very far. This is probably the most important foundational year after its inception. In 2019, the biggest milestone of 2019 was it helped launch a blockchain-based food safety platform built on Vechain Thor. You might have heard of this company. It's called Walmart. Kind of a big deal. That's interesting because if anyone, like I said before, if you've done business in China, like Walmart, you would know that there's two voices in the room. Regardless, Walmart China blockchain traceability platform was launched, and the white paper says that the first batch covered 23 product lines for Walmart. Vechain then introduced Toolchain, which lets businesses use blockchain without coding. It provides APIs, templates, and plug-and-play tools. Businesses could adopt blockchain quickly and cheaply. And then the floodgates opened with DNV and ASI Group. It launched as a cross-continental food and beverage traceability / logistics solution. Vechain signed an MOU or a memorandum of understanding with San Marino for a carbon neutrality. It partnered with the government to help the country become carbon neutral. The systems included tracking carbon emissions and rewarding sustainable behavior. In 2020, you guys all remember C19? Well, this becomes a major use case for many, including Vechain. This pandemic created a huge need for supply chain transparency, medical data tracking, and trust in products and logistics. Vechain stepped into this with partners like DNV. Businesses could prove sanitation standards, employee safety measures, and consumers could trust the data. Blockchain became a trust layer during a very uncertain time. This period saw more live use references in Vechain's own timeline. Bear China launched C-Secure, a traceability platform for clinical trial supply chains. DNV launched MyCare and MyBaby. Norsk Hydro implemented Tag, Trace, and Trust for green aluminum. And San Marino rolled out a national Green Pass related initiative. Vechain continued expanding sustainability and enterprise assurance solutions. It continued to work with Walmart China. More products were added into the tracking system, and it increased transaction volume. Then came the launch of Vechain Accelerator Program. Vechain introduced programs to support startups, building on the network, which encouraged ecosystem growth, and it focused on developers. It focused on enterprises and new use cases. In 2021, there was a major price run. This is when everyone started talking about Vechain. If you weren't at the time, I should say. Vechain VET hit its all-time high. It went to 28 cents USD in April of 2021. Why did it pump? Well, the crypto bull market, everything was running. A growing awareness of real-world use cases, a strong narrative of supply chains, enterprise adoption. This was Vechain's peak market hype moment. Behind the hype, real real usage continued. There was the expansion of Walmart China tracking systems and the ongoing work with DNV. Vechain introduced a VUSD, which is a stablecoin pegged to USD, and that enabled payments and DeFi and enterprise transactions. It actually was the main Vechain's entry into DeFi infrastructure. Vechain then started moving beyond just supply chains. This is where it goes downhill for me. Vechain started to focus on areas like DeFi and NFTs and Web3 applications. At the same time, Vechain doubled down on carbon tracking, environmental, or the ESG, or the environmental social governance solutions, with a vision to become blockchain for sustainability. In 2022, it was the end of the bull market. Prices were dropping, macro conditions. We had Terra, we had FTX, and obviously everything dropped drastically. Retail interest also faded and speculation cooled off. They shifted toward, meaning Vechain, shifted towards sustainability, which now became their core identity. Vechain leaned heavily into the ESG with their ongoing work with DNV. Vechain started rethinking its future. It introduced a new ecosystem direction, which was what Bully was talking about, pre-VBetter. An early groundwork for sustainability apps, incentive-based ecosystems, user participation models. Vechain began moving beyond just supply chains and then toward incentivized behavior systems or data economies or sustainability rewards. This is the early concept of pay people for real-world actions. Vechain published White Paper 3.0, which reframed the project more explicitly around sustainability and broad societal value, not just enterprise traceability. If you look back at 2021, the narrative was Vechain's going to explode. In 2022, people started asking the tough question, is Vechain actually growing? And now this forces the project to refocus and prove real value beyond hype. And speaking of hype, in 2022, Vechain announced a major global marketing partnership with UFC, which matters for reach and branding rather than core enterprise utility. But eyeballs are important, so I actually think this was a sound strategic marketing play for them. In 2023, the rebuild and the new direction, more of a transition year than a headline year. The goal was to reward people for real-world actions, especially sustainability behavior, participation, data contribution. For example, you walk more, you earn rewards. You reduce carbon footprint, you earn rewards. You engage with apps, you earn rewards. This is a big shift from once was an enterprise back-end tool to a user-facing ecosystem. And from it, proof of participation concept emerges. So again, proof of participation concept emerges for all this, walk more, reduce carbon footprint. You get rewards for the things you're going to do on the chain now. Now, instead of mining or staking, now you're doing things to earn these rewards. Bridges real world activity and blockchain rewards. Do you want to say anything, Billy? No?
No. So you said tracking footprints?
Yeah, so you walk more.
Do people get paid to walk?
You earn rewards.
Oh, dude, we should open up a gym and have them running on treadmills. You know what I'm saying?
Those rewards.
Oh yeah,
Love it.
You get a free shake. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what I'm getting at.
Just keep running.
You keep running, girl.
For me, this is a tale of two cities. 2015 to 2020 is one project. 2022 to 2026 is another project. So
interesting.
We go ahead.
So I am going to touch heavily on this in a minute.
Okay.
I think with partnerships, do you want to finish this and then I can do
Absolutely.
that? Because it touches on what you're talking about, because I understand what you're saying. I just have a different path, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So Vechain, they do say, I mean, to not to put any words in your mouths, Vechain does say that it didn't abandon enterprises. It just expanded beyond it. So that's what they're saying now.
So they definitely didn't abandon it by any means.
No.
It's definitely still being integrated. And there's a really good point I would like to make, but I'll wait till we're there.
Their ecosystem tools and products started taking shape. Early groundwork for products like wallet upgrades, developer tools, APIs for easier integration. The goal was to make it easier to build apps, to onboard users, and scale adoption. By the end of 2023, VeChain is no longer just a supply chain blockchain. It becomes a platform for real-world data, sustainability, and incentivized ecosystems. In 2024, VeChain launched VBetter, a consumer-facing sustainability and an X-to-earn ecosystem, a system where user performs real-world actions and they get rewarded on chain. Users can earn tokens, points, and incentives tied to apps. VBetter is real, and its reward token, which is what we're talking about, is V3TR, so better. VeChain's official site says that VBetter is an X-to-earn app ecosystem. VBetter's official doc says Better is the incentive token capped at 1 billion, and Vote is the governance token attained by swapping Better 1-to-1. These rewards can also include VTO for network level activity. So basically, guys, the old system was hold VET, earn VTO, very passive. New system is do things, earn rewards, more active and app driven, and also maybe compliant in the terms of law, if that happens. They also launched an expansion of vWorld, the super app direction. vWorld evolved into more than a wallet. It had access to dApps, identity features, reward tracking, ecosystem hub. The goal was to make VeChain feel more like a consumer app and not just a blockchain infrastructure. A tokenomics overhaul began. One of the most important developments was VeChain starts redesigning how value flows. The goals were for better connection with network usage, staking rewards, token value, by improving incentives and sustainability of the system. With things like Stargate, which stakes VET, better and more meaningful rewards. This matters because VeChain was effectively admitting that enterprise-only adoption was not enough at that point, and that it needed consumer scale activity as well. In 2025, there's a system overhaul. Renaissance upgrade begins, a major upgrade to how VeChain works internally. What they were trying to fix was the weak connection between usage, rewards, and token value, with better incentives for holding staking VeChain or VET. Rewards were more tied to real activity and more efficient network economics. They implemented the Hayabusa upgrade. Alongside Renaissance, Hayabusa focused on speed, efficiency, and technical improvements with the intention to lower costs, have smoother transactions, and a better enterprise performance. This supports scaling because more users, more apps, and more data. And then vWorld becomes the hub. No longer just a wallet, it becomes an app launcher, identity layer, and a reward tracker. You guys can think of it as like a dashboard for everything VeChain. That's what it became. Where businesses can use it, people can interact with it, and value will flow properly between both. VeChain also highlighted institutional value passports, which is what Bully was talking about earlier, tied to the EU's Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation, or ESPR. VeChain and Record are explicitly positioning to serve this market. VeChain says that Record's DPP, the Digital Product Passport, infrastructure is already in production at industry scale with 300,000 plus DPP events processed. According to VeChain's 2026 manifesto, there's 5.2 million users, 50 plus apps that are live, nearly 50 million VBetter transactions, and hundreds of thousands of weekly on-chain actions. There is a live ecosystem activity visible on VeChain tooling today. VeChain Stats or a VeChain Ecosystem Explorer / statistics site shows live DEX trades and chain analytics. Account pages also show active balances and transfer events for core ecosystem tokens like VeTho. On VeChain's own homepage, the project states that the chain has logged 530 million transactions and has had 100% uptime since 2017. And that, my friends, is Vechain from 2015 to 2026.
One's in the chat if that was absolute home run research analysis. One's in the chat for Caveman.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Did you want to talk about it?
There was a question in the chat if it's been hacked, and there's been 2 hacks, one major hack and one minor hack. I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Where are we?
Go ahead, all you.
No, I think I come last.
Okay, so Bully, do you want to touch?
So I was just going to touch on competitors. So we can throw that in wherever you want, and kind of like their lane, exactly where they're trying to focus, and what competitors are actually competing for them lanes. And yeah. Do you want me to go now, or do you want me to wait till later?
Let's talk about the total addressable market, because I think when we talk about that, you'll see where it's trying to go, and then you can touch on.
Sure.
Before we get into the TAM, in terms of this digital passport, right, with the Europeans ESPR, is this one of those frameworks that inevitably kind of evolves around the MiCA compliance in the EU? It has to, right?
Yes, correct.
So if in very short terms, this is just kind of a key indicator that this is an ecosystem where they are positioning themselves in a way that kind of aligns with regulations.
Absolutely. I got yes. Yes, they definitely are.
In this aspect, yes.
And they're not just dealing with like certifications, but they're, you know, when you're looking at supply chains and product data and compliance, they're kind of touching into a multitude of different laws, regulations, and standards. So I would assume that their integration with the rules and compliance globally, not just in particular jurisdictions, that kind of dictates whether or not they're going to be successful. That is something that we should be paying attention to. They don't get to create this type of ecosystem and just say we're gonna ignore that. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna ignore the rules, the regulations, the jurisdictions. They have to comply with that in order for them to be successful. Correct?
Yeah, and I can go into compliance and regulation after you do your thing too, if you want.
Do you want me to jump into the TAM, or you know what? I think you should do the compliance and regulations before I do that.
You want to do that?
If you could.
Okay, so the SEC, as you guys know. Okay, so let me just do this. Token, or the SEC, as many of you know, has issued a landmark joint ruling creating categories for crypto assets. So the categories are digital commodities, digital collectibles, digital tools, and stable coins. And that aligns as a digital commodity. So there's that. And then the EU compliance. So Vechain is one of the first major blockchains to have both VET and BTHO white papers confirmed on the EU MSM registry. So this is a massive institutional access unlock for EU funds and regulated entities that can now engage with Vechain. And then there's the KYC validators. So under the POA, all 101 authority master nodes were identity verified. And that's interpreceded for public blockchain. And that's why enterprises like Walmart use it. And then there's the EU digital product passport. And that's incoming EU regulations, and it will require verified product, lifestyle, data, and electronics, textiles, and batteries. Vechain's infrastructure is exactly what that mandate required, and is regulatory tailwind that could mandate enterprise blockchain adoption. So that's the compliance and regulation side of things.
So it seems like they're doing fairly well. That's kind of what we're looking for, is ecosystems that can abide with multiple industries across different jurisdictions. That seems like a very big pro to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And EU is a little more, yeah, I don't know. They're compliant, that's for sure. They're definitely aligning and complying where they need to be treated as such.
So, do we take the Oompa Loompa at his word and say that they're only going to focus on American companies?
I don't think so.
So
No?
I understand where you're going with that because that is actually one of my concerns with this project. So I'll give you that.
Okay. Well, let me give you some numbers first. The foundation. So here's a controversy that is discussed in the ecosystem a lot. The foundation has a 13.4% tied to a Singapore entity. 86.6% of the company is owned by a trustee. I'm going to give you guys a guess on what you think that trustee is. Do you think that's a person or an entity / the Chinese government?
Is it the CCP?
I'm gonna go with the latter, and it's not like and it's okay. What I'm trying. Here's my question, and I'm not trying to FUD it. I'm really not. I'm just trying to be open and honest. We're gonna do digital passports, EU with a Chinese controlled company.
So maybe if we get into competitors, that would kind of help. So if you identify which lanes they're going in, I agree with what you're saying as far as the centralized part of that. I don't love that, right? I don't love any token that can be manipulated by one entity. Not very good stuff.
I'm not even talking about the value proposition. I'm talking about the potential breach of data, very sensitive data. That's what I'm talking about.
Do they have any means of permissioned accessibility in terms of the data? Because I know that we are kind of co-joining the data points into one ecosystem, but do they have any privacy permission controls in this ecosystem?
Good question. Can you look it up? Let's just assume for a second that you are correct, that there are. Okay. And
I gotta get really super close to see it.
do you know what I
Can
mean?
see me?
They say yes. They use a hybrid blockchain model. There is off-chain data storage stored in private databases. That actually might be a concern. The storing data off-chain.
We love TikTok Shop. Although I guess we don't have to say it anymore.
GDPR
Anyways.
compliance. I don't even know what that is. GDPR standards. Okay, so there is restricted access to it. Raw data stored in encrypted decentralized storage, which can be configured in a way that only authorized entities can access the raw data, while the public only sees the proof of its validity. So maybe in terms of like a centralized being controlling that, maybe not with the permissioned data. Is that a possibility?
So are we talking about like people's personal data or just data in general?
I'm saying like between the like Walmart or BMW, between the enterprises and corporations actually coming together, would Walmart be able to tap in to see the data that BMW has? I would say that that'd be a huge red flag for these institutions, these corporations, these governments. They probably wouldn't use it if that data wasn't sensitized. Of course it is.
Of course, yeah. I would say that it's very safe. Yeah, I would say, so let's see. So it has a hybrid model. It's got immutability. It cannot be changed. It cannot be tampered with. And it's instantly detectable. I'm assuming that it's just like, blockchain. If someone tries to
I'm not concerned with what it was built for. I'm concerned with who built it
Yeah.
and who has the control of it.
Well, if
That's what
it,
I'm concerned about.
and I've never even heard of this compliance, GDPR compliance, but if they are, working within this framework, then I would assume that regardless of who built it, who actually has access to the data that's there, I think that this is kind of stating that it is privatized. Very interesting. I'd like to when we do go into the pros and cons, I'd like for you to expand definitely on that a little bit further.
Okay, Misty, please continue. Sorry, we interrupted you.
That's okay. I think I was done. Do you want to? The only thing that I have left is it's lane competitors. I think Bully was going to go with his
TAM.
TAM.
It's TAM time. Talking about the TAMI.
Let me see where exactly. Okay, market opportunity. So this is the part that kind of helps put everything into perspective. What is the potential of demand that can flow into the ecosystem? After I go through the total addressable market, I typically like to go into how these coins actually obtain its value, right? So the total addressable market is kind of just something that we can make sense of if this ecosystem is solving a real problem, but the market for it is small, then the impact on this ecosystem is going to be very limited, right? So what Vechain is trying to do is they are kind of sitting in the middle of how that information is going to flow across different systems, right? But it's not just one industry. They're doing this in multiple industries. You got the supply chains, the logistics, the manufacturing, retail. So all of this is where data has to be verified across all these different systems, and they have to do it in a trusted manner. So the TAM, they're not just going after like a niche lane with it, right? They're literally touching global trade. It's basically how products are going to be moving across countries and how it's going to touch the countries, how those countries are actually going to report that information. So in terms of the global trade, you're talking about trillions of dollars of goods are being moved across the year, being moved every single year across the entire globe, right? And every single time that something is touching that supply chain, there's data that's attached to that. Now, you can add on top of that systems that are going to track and manage those supply chains, right? Those systems that are tracking the data for that, they're worth billions. That's $1 billion industry. They're worth billions of dollars, okay? And that's growing year over year over year, okay? Now, you can add another layer on top of that, which is the compliance and sustainability for the ecosystem. Because these companies, they're no longer just moving the products. They're actually being required to prove where they came from, how they're made, and we can see that through the EU's DPP, okay, and that's kind of where that ties into the European MiCA regulations as well, right? But that's probably one of the most important trends for Vechain is the DPP. Where was it? The DP, whatever. I can't even find it. There's so much in there. I'm losing everything now. I'm a mess.
I understand that feeling. Now I'm all over the place. I got like 7 tabs open.
And then I see here, like according to it was one of these like tier 2 reporters, a PR Newswire or something. I'm not really sure if they're valid, but they're saying that the DTP market is supposed to grow to $200 trillion by 2030. $200 million to like $2 billion. Whether or not that's accurate, I don't know how these people are obtaining that valuation of the passport. Now, they're saying that supply chains in total, right? The trend of the supply chains could probably grow to $7 billion within the next 10 years. Now, all of these numbers, right, they don't sound massive. We're really not talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars here. But it's important to understand that we are in this early stage of infrastructure. And maybe the only way that we could really compare it to is kind of like the earlier stages of the internet. These are systems that are trying to track and verify the data. They're starting small, but they are sitting on top of much larger markets. Now, they typically always say that data is the new oil, right? What is your data going to be worth in 2050? Think about the amount of data that they are storing on you guys. That data has to be verified and trusted. This is the direction that we're going to. Global trades, when you're looking at global logistics, global manufacturing, all of that combined, that's where you're actually kind of seeing the trillions of dollars every single year. And every single part of that system is going to depend on data, right? So now you have trillions of dollars in global trade. You got tens of billions of dollars in the supply chain and the growing compliance of the data infrastructure. All of that is stacking on top of each other. If we can get into how the token actually obtains its value, I think that that's actually going to determine everything about this, right? Because everything around the project can sound great, right? The problem that they're addressing could make sense. The use case that they're going after is real. The partnerships are big, and the TAM or the market that they're chasing after could be very big as well. But none of that matters if the token doesn't actually capture the value. There's no point in me talking about these numbers if it's not going to put pressure on the price of the token, okay? So if this system gets used by BMW and Walmart and whatever partnerships, does it benefit the token? That's the $1 million question, right? Now remember that there are three tokens within this ecosystem. You got the Vechain, you got the VTHL, and you have the VBetter, right? VBetter is the third?
VBetter,
Okay.
right? Is it VBetter? VBetter.
VBetter.
Sounds right.
So VET is your main token that's tied to the network. This is what people are holding, okay? That's where you're kind of plugging into the participation and the actual staking in the system. The VTHO is what's being used to pay for activity on the network. So every time something gets recorded, every time that there is data that's written down in the blockchain, every time the system is actually being used, that activity is actually being paid for in the VTHO, okay? So this is where people need to kind of really consider if the companies are utilizing that token, what is actually happening to VET? Is there a indirect or a direct comparison between the two? And maybe this is where we start to separate the utility model to the value capture aspect to it, because you can have real utility and it could be used every single day. But if that doesn't automatically mean that the token is going to benefit from it, then we see a disconnection between the two. All right. So from my understanding, when you are holding VET, okay, that allows you to generate VTHO over time. So if the network is being used more, then there's going to be more demand for VTHO, right? Which hypothetically could increase the importance of actually holding the VET token. But I want you to pay attention to this, right? Because the relationship between the two is still indirect. They're not directly tied to one another. You can have an increase in usage that's going to increase the demand for VET, which potentially could put an impact on the actual price of the token. But the increased usage is going to increase direct demand for VTHO, right? So it's not necessarily tied to the VET token, but the increased demand for VTHO may influence the demand for VET. So I want you guys to kind of understand where that connection aspect ties into it, because there is a disconnect, but it's kind of connected in a way. But I think that it's important for people to actually understand how the system actually works, because companies are not using VeChain in the way that many retailer investors are thinking, right? We have to buy VET, but the system is saying, well, we need to actually use the system. And the actual token mechanics and what's happening in the background, it's not directly tied to VET. So my general consensus with the actual model of how the token obtains price, it's not necessarily directly to VET, right? VeChain has real utility, but the value capture for VET, it's not perfectly direct to how the institutions are using this system.
I mean, Wadi's gonna come up and disagree with that, but I would say the old way, yes, and the new system with the staking and the new earning by doing things, maybe it's more geared to capture value, at least if there's more people using the product or the ecosystem, not the product, the ecosystem.
Okay, maybe I can
but
have a conversation with Wadi about it. We can kind of get there.
But from the enterprise level, that's why when I said at the beginning, it's a tale of two cities or a tale of two stories. It literally, for me and only me, like in my small little peanut brain, I literally cut it down the middle. I say, okay, when it comes to like pre 2020, I 100% agree with you. To be honest, we'll go into this, but like I think that yeah, the value capture they should have just stayed the course. That's what they should have done.
So can I clarify where your stance is? Do you think is it a direct value capture to the institutional usage of the actual ecosystem, or is there still some weird disconnect with it?
The disconnect is in the fact that you had a bunch of guy corporate guys not understanding blockchain, in my opinion, and now you're catching up, and that's why the disconnect is real. That's why the value capture and the confusion of where it stands in I would say probably most of the people, uh, it's unclear. It's the problem is in the system, and now they're
It's a
trying to
weird one.
fix it.
It's a weird
Yeah.
one.
So you're saying that that's why you're saying that disconnect is why we're not seeing the price appreciation where we should.
Yes, because I think a majority of the retail holders, I mean, I know that some people are holding both, but I think that when people are primarily kind of looking at VeChain, this is what they're looking at.
Because that's a concern of mine too. Like it's down 97% from its all-time high, and it has institutional usage, and that usage that's supposed to be creating that asset to move up is not happening. So is that what you're saying, Caveman? Is that's the disconnect? That's what's happening?
I think it's a I think it's a two-parter. I mean, conversation with Evan just nailed it. But I also would say like if it's not if you look at both those coins, I'm not going to give you the exact numbers because it's not in front of me. But one's down 97%, one's down 94%. So if you look at Vitho and Bet, who should be correlated because one should be if the gas token is reflecting the ecosystem or the usage, then there should be an exact, not an exact, but a near exact. And I think that you've seen such a drawback is indicative of maybe a bigger problem. But the bigger problem is that they had such, for me at least, and only me guys, is that you had such a vision that was before its time, and then you just turned it 180 degrees. And so and honestly, you had a vision, but it was only in China. No offense to China. Like it needed to be broader. It couldn't just be there. And maybe it only was in China because the fact that it started in China and so it's hard to adopt.
I think it's more that it's hard. I think a lot of crypto companies didn't want to come to the United States because the SEC was so bad.
But there's
Like,
the world's big,
right.
very big.
Yeah.
It's not just, I know we think it's just America, but it's not.
The EU.
Right? I know, that's what I'm saying. Like there's other, like there's Australia, there's,
Right.
you know, I mean, you're right, Europe, all of Europe, there's Africa,
Yeah.
South America, Mexico. I mean, like it needed to expand beyond the confines of the Chinese border, and that was the problem, in my opinion. But I don't know what the population is in that right now of China. It's a very large economy. I'm not trying to diss anything there. Like you can definitely make money. Well, I mean, can you? So here's the problem. I go back to I go back to the whole thing I was talking about at the very beginning of the show. When the government is tied to a Chinese company, a national company, then you can't. You're bound by the rules and the laws of what they're going to tell you to do. They're going to profit share, and they're not going to profit share at a very fair rate. So you're kind of working against yourself, really. So from a business perspective, you're almost dead in the water starting. And so you try to expand, you try to go out further, and you try to go off on your own. Can you? I don't know if you can, if you're still based out of China. So, not sure.
All right. Well, let's see. That might bring me to. Let me just touch on this. Okay, so where are they trying to integrate? So they're trying to integrate, give me a second because I gotta find my notes. So enterprise supply chain, sustainability and ESG, and the agnostic economy. So those are the 3 lanes that they're really trying to go into. So from there, I wanted to find out who could their competitors be. So there's a few, let's see, for blockchain crypto, you have Oregon Trail, that's Track. You have Morphus Network and Walton Coin. For enterprise blockchain, you have IBM Food Trust and Hyperledger. And so then you have traditional tech. And traditional tech is SAP, Oracle, and Salesforce. So out of all those that I just listed, they can fractionally compete with Vechain. And when I say fractional, each one can do a little bit of something, but not everything that Vechain is positioned to do, except for SAP. So SAP is its actual true competitor. So then you have to ask, so where is SAP used? So it's used in over 180 countries and it powers 87% of global commerce. So this is heavily, heavily integrated, okay? And so with that being said, there's 2 companies that are both heavily SAP users, and those are Walmart China and BMW. So they're both very SAP heavy users, but they chose
SAP?
SAP, yeah, SAP. It's a digital passport, a digital product passport solution, and it was built in 2024. So that being said, they chose to run Vechain alongside their SAP system, and that is super important because it proves that Vechain doesn't need to replace SAP, it can integrate on top of it. So that's one thing that I would say that stood out to me, was that they have this other technology that they can use, that can upgrade, and that is used everywhere in the Middle East, Africa, Asia, North America, Europe. So, and they're running alongside that or running with it. Yeah. Take it how you will, but I thought it was pretty interesting.
It's a pretty big opposing team.
Yeah. It is a very big opposing team, and I was like, oh, that's really bad, right? But then the fact that, you know, the 2 biggest companies that they partnered with, which was Walmart and BMW, already run SAP, but they still chose to integrate Vechain, you know, that stood out to me. So I don't know. So, okay, so if that model actually did happen and Vechain were to ever formally integrate with the SAP ecosystem, that's 400,000 companies. That's 400,000 companies that Vechain would be addressable. It's like an overnight market shift, right? Like if they chose to implement that, that would be huge. And I don't know if Wadi's going to touch on that, but that's huge. So, and the thing that I compare it to, and I'm sorry that I always bring this up, but it's like, you know, XRP with the Ledger and Swift, right? Like it's that type of thing. Like, are they going to integrate and use? Are they going to replace? What does that look like? But it looks like Vechain is being built on top of this ecosystem. And so if it is, it could absorb 400,000 companies into its integration model. So that stood out to me.
And maybe the alternative to that is possible as well. Maybe SAP is kind of, in that ecosystem for the short term. And then when they get what they need for however long they need it, they branch off and kind of leave them in the dust. So that's kind of, if you guys are investors into this thing and you're looking at, oh, they got a Walmart partnership, maybe that could be really for the long haul, but it could also be cut short. We have to maintain that research and see exactly what's going on. It's one of those things like you got to carefully watch that basket.
Or are they trying to integrate? Are they trying to merge? Is this like the test net is Walmart and BMW? How are we going to do this? What kinks are we going to work out until we fully integrate Vechain into this system? Because it's not that SAP isn't already integrated, because they are there. My question is, why would they even have integrated Walmart, China, and BMW when they're already, so then researching a little bit more, it seems like that's the merge. Like they're going to want to try to merge these two things and complement each other. So I don't know. That could be huge.
That's some good breadcrumbs. That's really good critical thinking. It's very likely as well. If that is the case, then that's an absolute game changer. Are we missing any parts here?
Want to talk about the pros and cons?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
You want to kick us off, Caveman?
Okay. So what's it done well? We kind of already mentioned it a few times. First and foremost, it's survived. Like the fact that it's been around since 2015, freaking amazing. It has real world references. Walmart China is not to be, thrown in the garbage. That's amazing. DNV, lead assurance products, Bayer China, industrial traceability projects are not imaginary. It found a current narrative that actually fits its DNA: compliance, sustainability, product passports, and measurable real world impact. That is a better fit than trying to outdo, DeFi on Ethereum or out meme Solana. Like it found its own niche, which, again, great job. For me, the hiccups, enterprise adoption has been real, but not always reflective for the token as far as, any type of increase in value. The original enterprise blockchain thesis took longer than expected, and then it had to pivot toward consumer and incentives. For me it's a con, considering where, like, if something's good and it's going down the right path, then you don't just do a hard right. It is, and then another one is it's still not a dominant chain in the broader smart contract market. Those are my pros and cons. I'll do the conclusion after. You guys want to do your pros and cons?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think definitely for the pros is they are solving a real world problem. Verifying the data, tracking the products, that's a real problem today. So their use case, I think, is very applicable. And I like that they have stayed very focused on tracking, verification, and the data. Right? I think that's their lane. I think that they're doing fantastic with it. They've brought on pretty big names. Right? Businesses are connected to this ecosystem. I would say the biggest pro maybe could potentially be their alignment with the regulations. The team seems like they know what they're doing. That could also be a con because of the way that they've kind of set everything up. I don't like the value capture method. I really don't. I think that that's probably one of the biggest downsides is that there's not direct demand for VET. That connection, I think, is a little muddy. The competition, I think, is an absolute downside. You already have traditional systems and other technologies that are already competing for this. So we kind of just have to see if VeChain can keep up with it. Yeah, I'm gonna say that that's where I stand.
Yeah.
We will.
All right. So I like the things that you talked about too. So it's been around for a while. Real production, Walmart, all the things, the regulation, it's deflationary. I like the tokenomics. I like that, there's 100% VTHO burn, staking only for generation. Ultra low energy, I like that as well. And then 5.5 million V Better users. That's some customer adoption, so I like that. I'll touch on what Bully said a little bit. I almost think that the integration with SAP is a good thing, only because when I look at this system, I look at like traditional where we are, like what it's almost kind of like upgrading to blockchain, right? So I like that it's not a blockchain competing for a blockchain. It's a traditional rail being layered with a blockchain, if that makes sense. So kind of could be a good thing, kind of could be a bad thing, because if it doesn't work out, it could flop, right? But if it does, then yeah. So things that I don't love. I don't love that it's down 97.6% from its all-time high. The fundamentals to price, it's that disconnect, right? That caveman was talking about. That's a little iffy. The DeFi ecosystem is tiny. It's not explicitly named as a commodity yet. I don't love that. So I don't love that it's China. Its origins are China. I feel like there is a centralized or a geopolitical risk there. So I don't love that. And it's got limited retail narrative. I don't love that because obviously with any of these things, I feel like you have to have, retail kind of does its thing with things. But so that's where I'm at with that as well.
The Chinese controlled government coin is a problem.
Yeah,
It's a big
I
problem.
agree.
Yeah,
You
I
and
agree.
your-
And so here's the other part of that too, right? Is like we're not there yet. China is in a more controlled place than we are. They control their people more. They control what they consume for content. They control their internet. They control what they can invest in. There's a lot more control in China. And I feel like even if they have a little bit of control over this asset, it's not a good thing. I don't love that. But with that being said, I will say, let me just touch on this. So, touching on the control thing, right? So, they are, let me find it here. Sorry, guys. It is oh my gracious, I might have lost it. Sorry, I got to go up a little further. So, they're enterprise permission style blockchains. So, that's what Vechain falls into. That's what it falls under. But let me just fill you guys in on something. Hedera falls into that category. Ripple XRP Ledger falls into that category. IBM Hyperledger falls into that category. R3 Cadora falls into that category. So those are some big names that we love, right? So you have two layers of this system. You have the freedom layer, which is Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're open, permissionless, and anybody can join. Then you have infrastructure layers. This is where Vechain falls in. You have Vechain, Hedera, XRP, Hyperledger. And why is that? Because they're built for governance, corporation, and compliance. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit to be fair, to place it in the right category and others that are like. That's
I'm
all
actually really
that
glad
also.
that you brought that up because I'm not so and I guess this comes down to ideology, like a separation between like your ideology in the space versus like what could potentially what we really could move into with reality. I know that the decentralization ideology in the space is something that a lot of us, love and adore. But those examples you gave are pretty good confirmation that That's not really what the institutions, the governments, the enterprises are really jumping into. In terms, when you're looking at mass institutional onboarding, there always has to be somebody that's held accountable. Somebody has to get in front of a group of lawyers when something goes wrong. So there sort of has to be some sense of governance or a being, an entity that is responsible for it. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of adoption and integrations with that. I don't want to say like permissioned environments, but governance is important, and we read that from the Basel III requirement frameworks. We see that from the International Monetary Fund and the BIS. Governance is one of the key indicators for the global financial system. So I don't know if I would necessarily say that it's a downside. I know the CCP is what the CCP is, but they run a huge economy. Could they be successful with it, with their, means of enabling it? It's possible. Could it be successful because they are so strict and they want it their way? It's possible.
So conclusion, boys and girls, let's start with you.
Okay, so my score. And of course, you guys know I've got to make everything complicated. So real world adoption score is an 8.5 out of 10. Regulatory positioning is a 9. Tokenomics and design is a 7.5. Technology is a 7.5. Team and governance is a 7. The ecosystem and the DeFi is a 5.5. My overall score is a 7.7. So yeah, that's where I'm at. It's got the highest regulatory mark for real world adoption. Regulatory. The weakest area for me is the ecosystem and the DeFi.
Bully?
I'm giving it a 6. I liked it when I first stumbled upon it, and the last week of research, I kind of explored that there are more use cases than I thought I understood. The regulatory environment, I think, is definitely a pro. I really don't like the means of how the token, the VET token, actually gets its price obtained. And I came into it with kind of an open mind that maybe this would be an environment I would want to invest into, but now I'm not so sure. So I'm going to go with a 6.
I hate that it changed its spots. I do not like that the CCP has their claws in it. You guys want to be worried about where things are going to headed. Projects like this will definitely be a problem. And when we talk about the peanut butter manifesto here, or at least I do, and you don't want to spread yourselves too thin in a project. For those 3 reasons and those 3 reasons only, I give this project a 5.5. I would not invest in it.